Welcome back, everyone. I wasn't able to shoot an intro to this week's episode, but those that have been following along pretty much know what you're about to see. So thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoy it. We're getting closer to getting this Rogue started. Here the students are putting in the battery tray. Then the battery goes in and they'll finalize some of the electrical connections. Then the hood goes back on and we're about ready to give it its first start. This wasn't our first start, but I promise you it went as smoothly as this one. The kids did a great job in the replacement of this engine. With the CV joints cleaned and inspected, it's time to put them back together, and then we'll fill them up with grease. Next, the new boots go into the shafts. Next, the joints get filled with grease. Then they get knocked back onto the shafts, and the boots go over top of the joint. Next, the boot clamps go into place, and then we'll crimp them into position. Here I'm adding the bearing retainer around the outer race before putting it into our knurled hub.
When pressing in the new bearing, it's important to press from the outer race. So we're using an old outer race from a different bearing to press a new bearing in.
With the bearing pressed into the hub, it's now time to press the axle back into the hub. This is the reluctor wheel for the ABS, followed by a press piece that we're going to use to hold and support the inner race while we press the axle back through. With the inner race supported, we begin pressing the axle back in. The axle is pressed into the bearing and seal. Now it's time to remove it from the press, put on the snap ring, and put it back into the vehicle. Now it's time to do the other side. We begin by pressing the bearing out of the hub. It's about to cut loose any second. Here's the knurl marks for the second assembly.
I'm applying the bearing retainer.
Just like before, the bearing goes carefully into the hub. Then with our older out of race in position, along with our piece of flat steel, we're ready to press the new bearing into this hub. Then the seal goes in before pressing in the axle. With the carburetor cleaned up, it's time to put it back together. The main jet and pilot are already in position, but here he's putting in the float. Now he's checking for adjustment. We're making sure that the bottom of the float is parallel to the housing. Here he's removing the accelerator pump from the float bowl. We'll get this all cleaned up and put it back together. With the bowl secure, it's time to put it back on the bike. We decided to pull the valve covers off just to check the valve adjustments. They're already where they need it to be, so we're just about ready to fire this thing up. Sounds great. Time for a test drive. Here James is lining up the original spacer blocks for the rear axle to drill into the blocks we're putting in to raise the rear of the vehicle. With the pilots marked, he's ready to drill. Here he has the block flipped over just to clean up the hole from the opposite side. Now the seat pan gets put back onto the frame. A little cold, isn't it? Next time on Bulldog Builds, we'll get the axles put back into our Isuzu Trooper project. We're also going to put the parking brake assemblies back together on it as well. And we've got this cart that came in with some excessive tow out. We're going to see if we can take care of that. See you next week.